Okay, so I want to talk to you guys today about ankle mobility and why it's so important. So it's so important to have proper and adequate ankle mobility because it helps us function in so many things in our daily life. So from running to walking, to squatting, sitting, going just from sit to stand, having proper mobility through the ankles is very important for this. And problems and injuries start to arise when we start to lose some of that mobility through the ankles. And when I talk about ankle mobility, I mean ankle dorsiflexion. So dorsiflexion is the ability for basically the toes to go up towards the ceiling. Okay, and I want to kind of demonstrate this with just a simple squat here. So if you try a couple squats at home and you go down and you start to squat down and then your ankles or your heels start to come off the ground, that's one of the biggest signs that we see of limited ankle dorsiflexion. Okay, so if you take something that can lift your heels off the ground and then try it again, so like the front of shoes is a good thing to use. So if you do that and then just prop your heels up here and then you go down again and it feels easier, you're able to go deeper, you don't feel like you're gonna fall forward, that could be a sign that you are limited with your ankle mobility. And this is important for a few different reasons because number one, so we tested the squat, kind of felt unstable the first time your heels coming off the ground, and then we added in kind of just a little bit of a base of support for the heels. So for the ankles, it made it a little bit easier. So that's kind of where we can see one sign of a little bit of limited ankle dorsiflexion through there. Because we didn't change really anything besides making it a little bit easier for the ankles. So number two, if you're a lifter or if you're just getting into lifting and you don't have the mobility through the ankles, you can start squatting and having bad form or poor form without even knowing it, which can eventually lead to injuries or issues down the road, especially when you start adding more load and more weight to whatever it is you're doing. If you're deadlifting or squatting or doing cleans, whatever it is. Number three, when we don't have that adequate mobility through there, what happens is when you go down to squat or when you go down to sit in a chair, whatever it is, your center of gravity is shifted backwards. So if you're not able to bend through the ankles, you have to do something else to compensate for that, to get the center of gravity back to the middle. So oftentimes what happens if you're squatting, you'll go down if you have a bar up here, but then ultimately what you're gonna do is you're gonna dump that back forward to bring the center of gravity back to the middle. So what can happen here, if you have a lot of weight on there, is it can lead to low back injury, mid back, even neck injuries too. But further than that, for the elderly population, if they're really limited through the ankles and they, let's say, go to sit down in a chair, well, what can happen is they can just fall backwards, right? And that can lead to something even worse, some serious injury, a fall, hit their head on something, and we don't want that. Number four, when you are squatting and if you're lacking through here again, so what can happen is you can go down, and then what can happen is your feet might flare out like this. And this could be due to other factors too. This isn't the only reason. This could be due to hip anatomy or this could be due to mobility through the back. But just looking at the ankles here, if this constantly happens and you don't have the ability to go like this, your feet can flare out. The arches in your feet can start to flatten. And then what happens is when you go down, the knees start to cave in, the hips cave in. So that can lead to foot pain, knee pain, hip pain, even all the way up the chain into the low back and the mid back. So I want to show you another test that we can do to see if we do have adequate ankle mobility. So for this test, what we're going to be looking for here is for that knee to touch the wall without this heel coming off the ground. And we want to see how far we can slide that foot back until that heel starts to come off when you bend it forward. And what we're looking for with this is about 6 inches from that big toe to the wall here. So I measured my hand before, And my hand right here is about 4 inches across. You don't have to do this at home, but just kind of a good reference point for this. So if I do this and I lean forward here, see, like I'm lacking in ankle mobility. I need to work on this. So I'd have to move this a little bit more forward, and then we're gonna go here, and then my knee is able to touch the wall there. So, I mean, just looking at this, I'm probably 3 inches or so. So if you are somebody who's really limited through here, like I kind of am, I would start working on this. And this is the same, this test right here is the same exercise that you would do at home. So about 10, 15 reps a few times throughout the day, just working on this. So just going back and forth, back and forth, 10, 15 reps until you're able to start to slide that foot back little by little, and then start getting back into those more complicated lifts, the squats and the deadlifts and the cleans and all that stuff. Because we don't want to create issues by not having mobility through here when really we can prevent them from happening before they even start. Okay? So that's another test you can do. So we have the squat test, we have that wall ankle dorsiflexion test. Try these out at home. Let me know what you think of them. If you have any other questions, just let me know. Happy to answer whatever you have. Take care, and we'll see you soon for something new.